They said I was trying to be special, that I wanted attention. But the truth is, I was just trying to survive. Trying to breathe in a world that kept pressing its weight on my chest. A world that called my truth a phase, and my identity a rebellion. But I didn't want to be seen. I just didn't want to disappear. I was 8 when I first realized there wasn't a word for me. Not in my parents' vocabulary. Not in the Sunday school lessons. Not even in the mirror, which stared back at me with quiet confusion every morning. "Boys wear blue," my father said as he yanked the soft lilac shirt out of my hands at the store. "Don't make this difficult." So I didn't. Not at 8. Not at 11. Not even at 15, when the inside of my chest felt like it was cracking open every time someone called me young lady or girl. I played the part. I smiled when I was called pretty. I crossed my legs the way I was told. I dated boys, even when every kiss felt like I was lying to both of us. My mother cried when I cut my hair. Sat on the edge of my bed with her rosary wrapped around her hands like a lifeline. "You used to be so beautiful," she whispered. "I still am," I wanted to say. But I didn't. Because her idea of beauty was borrowed from old wedding albums and bridal magazines. Mine hadn't yet taken shape, but I knew it wouldn't wear heels. They told me I was confused. That I was just seeking attention. That I wanted to feel special. But I didn't want eyes on me. I wanted them off me. Off my chest, my hips, the curves that never felt like mine. I was 17 when I told my parents. Or tried to. We were having dinner. Chicken stew and yam, the kind that stuck to your throat and didn't go down easy when tension was in the air. I cleared mine. I've been reading a lot about gender, about identity. My father's fork clinked against his plate. My mother stared at her stew like it had turned to poison. "I think I'm non-binary," I said, voice trembling. "I don't feel like a girl. I never have." The silence that followed was so heavy it could have shattered glass. My mother looked at me like I had stolen something from her. My father's lips curled in that slow, quiet way that always preceded a storm. "So now you don't want to be a woman?" he asked. "I don't think I ever was," I answered. He stood up. "Eat," he said coldly, "and stop talking nonsense." I didn't sleep that night. Not because of what they said, but because of what they didn't. The way they didn't look at me. The way my mother put my plate in the fridge and labeled it with my old name. My friends didn't understand either. They thought I was going through a phase. They called me dramatic for changing my pronouns. Said they slashed them, made sentences sound weird. I started using them less. Less in speech. Less in writing. Less in truth. I began to fade. My skin was still here. My face still smiled. But I wasn't living. I was performing. Then I met Layla. She was older. Confident in that quiet way that didn't need to announce itself. She worked at the community library, always wore suspenders and mismatched socks, and never corrected anyone who misgendered her because she didn't care. One day, she looked at me and said, "You're folding into yourself." "What do you mean?" "You walk like you're trying to disappear." I wanted to tell her I was. That disappearing was safer than being seen and hated. That silence was the closest thing to peace I'd known. But she kept talking. "When I was your age, I tried to fold too," she said. And one day I realized maybe I'm not the one who's wrong. Maybe the mirror is broken. She introduced me to people who looked like me. People who used they slashed them like it was the most natural thing in the world. People who laughed with their full chest and dressed like joy itself. I started wearing lilac again. The first time I walked out in clothes that made me feel right, I thought I might vomit from fear. The stares. The whispers. The man who scoffed, "Pick a side, Jesus." But then a child in the supermarket smiled at me and said, "Cool shirt." It was enough. Layla told me, "You don't have to be brave every day. Just loud enough to be real." I started journaling. Writing letters to my younger self. Reading them aloud in the mirror. You're not broken, I'd say. You're not selfish. You're not weird. You're just you. I moved out the week I turned 20. My mother didn't hug me. My father didn't speak. But my sister pressed something into my hand before I left, a folded piece of paper with 2 words. Still proud. It wasn't everything, but it was something. The world didn't become safer overnight. The stares didn't stop. The what are yous didn't stop. But I had stopped shrinking. I started using my voice. Not to explain. Not to defend. Just to exist. I volunteered at the local center. Taught kids the words I never had. Taught them that different isn't dirty. That truth isn't rebellion. That silence may feel safe, but it doesn't heal. A few weeks ago, I spoke at a panel. Shared my story. Talked about names and pronouns and pain. When I finished, a teenager with dyed green hair came up and said, "I didn't know people like us could grow up and be okay." I smiled. Neither did I said. But we can. We do. Not because we want to be special. Not because we're chasing a trend. But because we want to live. Fully. Unapologetically. Loudly when we can. Softly when we must. But always, always as ourselves. They said I was trying to be special. But I was just trying to survive. Now I'm not just surviving. I'm living. And there's nothing more special than that.